You're taking...
You laugh, but I direct you to a recent, very important article. You can get it off the website of the Weekly Standard about the way that the same church has just become the Russian Orthodox Church, the official church of Vladimir Putin's new dictatorship in Russia. That's fairly well known. What people don't know is it's now producing new icons to appeal to the extreme authoritarian nationalism and chauvinism of the Putin regime. And these icons show Joseph Stalin. Russian Orthodox icons show Stalin with a halo around his head. You can buy them. Look, they're selling them.
From a
Stalinism. I've no hesitation in describing Stalinism as a religion.
From a Christian point of view, yes, that's exactly right. And this is what we fear when you, in fact, take God out of the equation. When you do not believe that there's a legitimate, when you believe that there's not a legitimate higher being, then of course you end up with God's surrogates. That's what Stalin did. Stalin creates the state as a surrogate.
Are you accusing the Russian Orthodox Church of taking God out of the equation? They're the ones who produce these icons.
No, we're not talking about the icons. We're talking about Stalin. We're talking about Martin Luther King Jr., a Baptist pastor, who you write off as a humanist, and Stalin, who's an atheist. You deny that, but most people would agree that he was an atheist.
Maybe most people would, but they know less about it than I do. Have we finished with Stalin? Because he's now the property of the Russian Orthodox Church. So if you want to make him a secular figure, you're entitled to try.
Let me get this. I want to make sure I have this on the record, Christopher.
Yes.
You're saying that Stalin is not a secular figure.
Absolutely. I'm saying Stalinism is and was a religion and is now recognized as such by the Russian Orthodox Church. But I think it might be something interesting for your listeners to follow up on. They'll find that I'm right. Now, in the case of Dr. King, what I say
I'm sure that's not true.
I assure you that it is.
So, now, I couldn't, it's difficult to contain my humor at this because, let me repeat again what he said. The Russian Orthodox Church is now producing new icons which show Joseph Stalin with a halo around his head. They are selling them. Stalinism is a religion and is thus recognized as such by the Russian Orthodox Church. Now, your instincts are probably similar to mine, and you thought, this is nonsense. But like many urban legends, there's probably some morsel of fact buried in the dung heap. And, what in the world could he be referring to? So I got off the air, figured I'd find out exactly what this icon business was all about. I figured it had to be something there. Sure enough, he had pulled a bait and switch. Paul Globe, who's a longtime specialist on ethnic and religious questions in Eurasia, and until recently the director of research at the Azerbaijan Diplomatic Academy, had posted a story in late November of last year. And I borrow liberally from his November 27 blog right now. A dissident Orthodox priest in a town near St. Petersburg had sparked controversy by putting up an icon of Blessed Matrona of Moscow. Stalin was portrayed on the icon, but without any of the attributes of sainthood. He was simply standing next to her, and so, technically, from the standpoint of orthodoxy, this was not an icon of Stalin at all. It's an icon of Blessed Matrona. Apparently, according to an unconfirmed legend, Stalin secretly visited her at the house of a friend, and she predicted that Moscow would not fall to the Nazis. That's how Stalin ends up on an icon of Matrona of Moscow. Now, in posting the icon, the priest, who has a provocative history and has frequently stepped outside his authority, in posting the icon, the priest gets denounced by the Moscow Patriarchate. Okay, that's the episcopacy. According to one report, he was so severely reprimanded by his superior that he became physically ill. His parishioners, or many of his parishioners, forced him to remove the icon from the altar, calling it blasphemy. So that's what I was able to pick up without asking anybody. I emailed Paul Globe to see what had developed since his November post. Well, first, the original Stalin icon was taken down. Second, the priest was transferred. Third, copies of the icon continue to show up at various Russian nationalist meetings. But even the dissident priest specified that this is not an icon glorifying Stalin. This is an image of Matrona of Moscow. Stalin is one of those people whom she blessed. She blessed many people. And there's stories, too, about her blessing a particular architect and a composer of the period. According to one Russian Orthodox blogger, all this fuss about canonizing Stalin comes from two marginal groups, but gets spread around because it sounds funny to journalists. One group is a dissident Orthodox faction. The other is a restorationist communist group whose size might not even hit double digits. And Hitchens says, go to the Weekly Standard? Well, I did. The Weekly Standard reports it this way, quote, on the fringes of Stalin worship, a small bizarre cult regards the communist dictator as a closet Christian and even advocates his canonization. Rather than produce and sell these icons, the Russian Orthodox Church has spoken out against them. It has not recognized the saintly origins of Stalinism. So, again, you have a deliberate, what I have to assume is a deliberate and even shameless manipulation of the truth. And perhaps Christopher's socialist and revolutionary past, he was a great admirer of Che Guevara. Maybe that renders him more susceptible to telling lies about the Russian Orthodox Church or seeing halos around Joseph Stalin. But look, St. Paul warns that those who refuse to give thanks to their Creator become fatuous in their argumentation. And sin in the heart becomes the source of error in the head. So that's what we have there with the Stalin. It's again a case of special pleading. Let's tell you what, let's move on and pick up another portion of. By the way, I should say something too here that comes from the teachings of Jesus. Jesus said that by your desire to know the will of God, you will know whether his teaching is from God. He also said that in his conversation with Nicodemus in John chapter 3, he said that if you don't believe me when I speak to you about earthly things, how are you going to believe me when I talk about heavenly things? I've always loved that. I've always thought this is one of the reasons I trust Jesus. Here's somebody who says, look, when I tell you about things that you can verify, when I tell you about things that are within your own realm of experience, when I tell you about earthly things and you don't believe me, how can you believe me when I talk to you about heavenly things? Well, you can flip that and say, and it's equally true, that when I teach you about earthly things, I will teach accurately. When I teach in those areas that you can verify, you'll recognize my good sense. You'll recognize the wisdom that I have. And therefore, you're justified in believing me when I speak about heavenly things. It seems to me that's the point that Jesus is making, one of the many points that he's making in John chapter 3. And I would say that that's one of the ways we get to know people, too. When they speak in areas that we know something about and we can check them out, we do so. And that either creates trust or it creates mistrust. Of course, one doesn't have to be infallible in order to solicit trust. But if somebody's telling you something like this, that the Russian Orthodox Church is now producing and selling icons of Joseph Stalin with a halo around his head, and you learn that no such thing is happening, well, you got to say to yourself, look, in this earthly thing that I can, with a few hours of investigation, check out, if that's what, if that's the way you evaluate evidence, then maybe I shouldn't trust you on the broader issues where I don't have personal experience.